organization than just IT. So if you were to say, who's the first person we're going to try to contact in the accounts we go after, typically it's the chief financial officer. We also are specific in our marketplace. We believe the SMB, small to medium-sized business marketplace, is the best for this type of environment. That doesn't mean that you can't go call on a Fortune 1000 or a Fortune 500 company with this product. What it means is your success rate will be minimized because of much greater competition and the fact you probably can't get in to see the CFO in those organizations, and you have to start with middle management. You bring in more decision makers, and sometimes on a larger account like that, you may have 6, 8, 10, 12 decision makers involved. And as we all well know, it only takes one of them to cut your deal. So we go after that SMB marketplace for a very, very strong purpose. And like I said, because we can typically get to the chief financial officer of that organization. Here's the presentation that we typically go after. We will go and talk to people at an initial appointment and ask them, do you have any idea how many document output devices you have? You know, like printers, copiers, faxes. Most people we talk to really don't have any idea, or if they do come up with a number, it's far less than what they actually have. Because typically they'll think of maybe network devices, but they won't think of the USB or parallel connected devices that are on the floor and somebody's desk and things of that nature. They also don't know how many models of different devices that they have. But the reality of it is they typically have many, many models and very, very little consistency or standardization. They don't have any idea whether they're being properly used, you know, whether they're being used too much or too little. And what I mean by that is people in this day and age, they'll say, hey, we need a new printer over for Susie in accounting. So they'll run over to Office Depot, spend, you know, $200 or $300 on a printer and put it on her desk, not realizing that she's running 4,000 or 5,000 pages a month. And if you have a scenario like that, you bought a device not only that won't last very long, typically 12, 18 months tops, but you're also spending more on toner cartridges than are necessary. So the ROI on that device is very, very negative. So what we do is we go in and look at a fleet and see what the volumes are in devices and make sure that they've got the right device in the right place for the right people. We use a software that discovers this information, and we're able to see if the usage is proper for that device. Doesn't mean that the $200 printer is a bad printer. It just means that they probably shouldn't be printing more than 300 or 400 or 500 pages a month on it. Also, people don't have any idea how often the devices are in need of service. You know, how often the printers are out of toner. You know, do they send, you know, somebody, you know, over to Office Depot or Staples to go buy toner when they need it instead of having it, you know, there and ready for them to use? Or conversely, do they have a stock room that has $10,000 worth of supplies in? That's unnecessary as well. The other side of that is if they do have that in their stock room, they have multiple different cartridge types in their stock. And what happens if they buy cartridges and they get rid of that printer or that printer fails and dies? Then they have cartridges that they'll never use. Literally 50% of every account of the accounts that we walk into have multiple cartridges for devices that don't even have any utilization anymore. So if you look at the dollars of supply inventory that are across any organization at any given time, it can be hundreds and possibly even, you know, thousands and tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the organization. And lastly, you know, how much IT time is spent supporting those printing devices? You know, do they have a help desk? Do they have one single IT guy? What do they have? If it's a small to medium-sized business, you know, they probably only have one IT guy, maybe two tops, or they have no one at all, that third party that IT support through another company. So what we do is we'll take a look at that and assess the cost of that as well. But the bottom line is they may have a problem that's hurting their bottom line, and they're not really truly aware of it because they just consider this, well, this is just how we have to do business. Whenever we put a management program together, it's a turnkey program, and we'll provide equipment, service, supplies, everything. Increase efficiencies, gain control over cost, manage those costs, and allow that company really to focus on the business that they're in instead of having to deal with things that they really don't have a good grasp of. We can provide hardware, software, supplies. On our clients, they don't ever have to order supplies, ever. Bottom line is we ship supplies automatically before they even need them. So it arrives on time, and they don't have to call up and order supplies for anyone. Service, all they have to do is go on our website, enter the service information on our website, and boom, we get a technician out there. So they don't have to even get on the phone. We you know, if they want to call us, that's great. We're happy to do that. But reality reality of it is they don't even have to do that either. And they have one invoice instead of managing possibly dozens of invoices. If you've got a company who has a fleet of, say, 20 or 30 devices, at any given month, depending on lease agreements that they may have, depending on service agreements, IT calls, third-party service calls, toner cartridges being bought, they could have 20 or 30 invoices a month potentially on a fleet of 20 or 30 devices. We get that down where they have one. Plus, we do ongoing management consulting. We take a look and review every account on a quarterly basis to make sure that the right device is running the right amount of volume. And if we see any issues with that, we take care of it. So we're always constantly managing that process. And needless to say, this will consolidate the number of vendors they have and have one single point of contact actually to do business with. Bottom line is, if they have a brand affinity, they can name the brand and we'll provide the hardware. But as far as an authorization goes, we're authorized on Brother, Canon, Dell, Epson, HP, Lexmark, Muratech, Oki, Toshiba, and Xerox. If there's a brand they want other than that, we can probably get that for them as well. I've got an account we're providing Ricoh devices to right now, so it's not a big deal. But the bottom line is, when we provide this equipment, there's no capital expenditure. They're not having to write a check for it. We're cutting into a monthly payment that they can afford. And then we also refresh that equipment consistently within an account. That way they don't have equipment die or not last the term of the agreement. I don't know how many times I've gone into a company and they've signed a 5-year agreement on a copier that they just run the dog out of, and it only lasts about 3.5 years. That won't happen with us. Also, if they need to upgrade or downgrade equipment within an agreement, maybe they went into the agreement that started kind of small and they bought some devices, acquired some devices from us that really didn't meet the needs 2 or 3 years down the line. We allow them to be flexible in upgrading or even downgrading that equipment. We base our invoices on usage. So what that means is if you have a company that, God forbid, starts laying off people and their usage declines, a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, we're able to reduce that volume as well and not penalize them for it. And needless to say, we standardize the models that we have within an account. That way they have fewer different models and fewer different toner types and things of that nature that we have to deal with. We have a software program that manages their fleet. Simple as that. And we can tell at any given time what the status is of any device. We can take a look and see that, hey, that device in accounting is out of paper. The device over in payroll needs toner. The device over in the IT department has got an issue with it, and it's a code 5. Whatever the case may be, we're going to be able to look at any given time 24/7 and have visibility on that. And then we'll monitor that, put supplies in automatically, and track those service errors. And then we can provide them billing on that usage either on a monthly or quarterly basis. The supplies, like I mentioned before, we cover every major brand of supplies. And like I said, everything's monitored remotely, and everything is replenished based on the days and amount of toner remaining in that cartridge. And that we have an algorithm that we use that literally tracks usage, so that if we see somebody's increasing their usage, then we're going to ship that toner out quicker. Or if we see someone that's hardly using the device at all, then we'll continue to monitor that and ship at the appropriate time instead of shipping it way too early. And also, when they receive that shipment, they're going to get a label on the outside of the box, as well as on the cartridge on the inside of the box that says where that device is going to go to. It's going to have an department name, a person's name possibly. It's going to have the serial number, the model, the ID number of that device for every cartridge that comes in. It will be attached, like I said, on the outside of the box as well as on the inside of the box. Our service group is of a national infrastructure. What that means is no matter where your client is, we can service it. So if you're in Butte, Montana, that's fine. Or if you're in a major city like New York, that's fine as well. It doesn't matter to us. So anybody on this call, no matter what your location, we can provide service and support for any device that we bring on line with our program. And we also do proactive scheduled maintenance as well. So that way we keep the devices up and running in peak condition. It's kind of like doing a lube, oil, and filter on your car. We do the same type of thing, with these devices. And the big thing, which you see in bold there, is we offer a replacement guarantee on all covered equipment. If If we can't fix that device properly, we will replace it at our cost, not the client's. And that is a key differentiator between us and everyone else out there. We also, because we have national dispatch, the calls that come in over the internet or over the phone, we do a phone triage to where we can figure out what the issue is before we send the technician out there. That way, if they tell us that it's got a certain code, we know that code is, maybe for a fuser section of a device. We'll send out the fuser and everything with the technician instead of, going out to the call, seeing that it's a fuser as you coming back, getting the part, and going back out again, thus eliminating the needs, for multiple calls, on a single fix. We have a program that we refer to as myprintermanager.com, and it will show not only you, me, but if the client wants to see it as well, we can determine who needs to see this, but we can show what the visibility on their entire fleet. It will show a model number. There's one in Nashville, Tennessee. We blanked out who it is, but a gentleman from Nashville might recognize that address. Who knows? But the bottom line is, if you can pull up and see what type of device it is, serial number, etc. It will show them what the toner levels are. In this case, it's a color multifunction device, so it has black, cyan, magenta, and yellow toner. And it will show what the level remaining is and when the estimated replenishment date is. Also, if a shipment has gone out, it shows the UPS tracking number, which you can click on and see who signed for that order when it came in. If there's a service ticket, it'll show that down at the bottom, and you can click the details to see what was done on the service ticket. Bottom line is, though, in order to move a program like this along, there's a few things we have to do. We have to work together with someone in finance at one of those organizations and get some data which shows what their cost levels are regarding their fleet. We also do an assessment with our software that calculates the monthly volumes on the devices. We can do anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 days. We typically don't feel like over 30 is necessary, but we can do as little as 2 weeks. Don't feel like it's good to go under that area, but 2 weeks to 30 days. And it'll see the printer health, the usages, utilizations, things of that nature. And then we'll put together an assessment and what our recommendations are. And then once we've implemented, we start doing quarterly reviews, optimizing, then over a period of time, right-sizing. If we took over a fleet that had a lot of devices, we may right-size, reduce the number of devices, and further reduce cost. I'm going to get out of this now and show you an example of just a small local motorcycle shop that was in one of our locations. People ask all the time, what's the smallest size of client that we can go after? Well, I like to do things where they have 10, 15, 20 devices, and then move up from there. But here's an example of one that only had 5 devices. They had a little Lexmark multifunction device, a Lexmark printer, an HP printer, another Lexmark printer, and then a Brother multifunction device. And you can see where they were located at. One was located in the sales manager's office, one in finance, one in parts, one in service, and then another device in parts down the bottom. And we took readings on these devices and calculated that they were doing about 10,000 pages a month, 2 cases of paper a month, basically, going through their devices. And then what we did was we gathered their financial data. On that financial data, we actually pulled up what the individual volumes were, what they were paying for their cartridges, what the manufacturer says they would get out of it yield-wise, and then calculated a monthly toner cost. We also got what they paid for the devices, divided what they paid for it by 60 months to show them what a monthly cost was to own that device over a period of 5 years. And then we gather that data and bring it all to the top. So they have, in this case, $450 worth of supply cost. They didn't have any service agreements, and they had no IT person on hand. Those equipment costs that I mentioned back over here, what it costs to own that equipment, averaged about $28 a month. And then they had a phone line that was attached to that one fax machine that would cost them $35 a month. And so what we did is calculate that together, came up to $521.06 for monthly cost for that fleet of 5 devices. We calculated the volume and divided it back in, which meant that they were spending just over a nickel a page for every page that was printed. And so that was our baseline for our cost for this small account. And then what we did was, after we gathered that information, we went back in and said, all right, we want to standardize your fleet. We're going to pull that multifunction device that does color to do your most volume. Then we're going to put the same printer on everybody's desk, and then we're going to put a multifunction device that will fax as well as copy and print back in the parts department. So the next slide, this is our cost information for those devices. Bottom line is we put about $3,000 worth of gear in, and our monthly service costs were about $176, which we then took over and calculated out what the cost to the client would be. In this case, we decided we wanted to save them about $100 a month, which was a 21% cost reduction. We put the service and supply cost and marked them up. This is the amount the company started paying once they did business with us. This is the amount that was recurring revenue on a monthly basis back to us, which was roughly a 50% margin. And then this is the amount we used to finance with the bank. So the leasing company gave us a rate factor on a 5-year deal of 0.02005, which funded an amount of $6,300. We put in $3,000 worth of equipment, which means that we gross profited on the front end $3,268, and then once again had a monthly reoccurring amount of $284 for a 60-month term. And that's an example of a small deal that really didn't take a lot of time to do. We only did a 2-week assessment on, and we were able to turn that. And I ask you, how many motorcycle shops like that, do you possibly have just in your area alone? And things, obviously, that are larger than that can create much more revenue and gross profit.
Kevin, if I may interject here, all right?
Sure.
And carry everybody back through the nature of the computations and what I perceive to be the extraordinary opportunity that is created by a pricing model such as Kevin has developed. Remember, we start off with determining the cost per page for the customer by looking not only at what he's spending for his print, but what he spent for the equipment that he is printing on. And then without using any interest rates or anything, we simply divide that cost of the equipment by 5 years, by 60 months, to determine what his monthly cost is. That's going to get you to a point where the cost per page for the customer is frequently going to be in the 4 to 5 cent level, maybe slightly above, because that is our true cost of realizing our print solution, the combination of the cost of the equipment that we print on together with all the other ongoing costs. Having generated that number, right, if you carry your slide up just a little bit there, Kevin, all right, so we can see what that number was, right? That is what their current cost was to produce the number of pages that they were printing. We then elect what quantity of price reduction we want to give to the customer, somewhere probably between this 10 and 21% number. And you deduct that out, and it shows you what the new customer's price will be, which almost invariably under the situation says, we are going to bring you a new solution for the same quantity of printing with a much better service package, with a tremendous guarantee on the equipment itself, and very frequently with a significant amount of new equipment at a lower monthly amount than you were historically paying. So 100% of our transaction has our service package plus our hardware package, cost justified to the customer, knowing that it will be less than his current cost. We then take the cost that we are engendering, all right, for providing the printing, and essentially double it to get to the monthly amount. And the first thing I'll tell you about this, it is about, for the same number of endpoints, okay? We have a 6 endpoint customer here. Think of that in terms of phones. If we were writing a partnering program on these 6 endpoints, we'd be out there charging somewhere around $25 or $30 a month versus $284 a month. So my suggestion is the quantity of recurring revenue that is engendered to you is significantly greater. And then by taking the spread between that monthly revenue, we find out how much equipment we can finance. It's like being in a CTAP refresh on day one, where we are coming back in and knowing that we can bring the equipment to the customer, new equipment to them, at a value point at the initiation of the transaction. It may not always be there, but it's frequently going to be there. So you get two tremendous apple bites here. One is a recurring revenue stream, typically significantly greater than we would get out of voice. Two, a revenue stream that is, for your portion of it, essentially net to you, because you will need no technicians, no companies, no individuals in your company providing the underlying service to the customer. That is all handled by OneDOC on your behalf. And you'll be sharing a right in the gross margin of the equipment package, which also includes not only the equipment of the customer, but its installation on site for you. So any questions at this point on these core economics that Kevin ran through?
Dale, this is Don. The $284.37 for printer service. So that's the total amount that's going to be paid for printer service. What portion of that do we get to keep as recurring revenue?
Okay, the margin on that is going to be, Kevin, you got another worksheet for that to show the margin breakup we've got here at all?
In this particular case, this particular deal here, our cost on it was $176. And we are billing 284. So in this particular case, it was under 50%, but we typically try to average around there. In this case, you've got about $110 in recurring revenue that is actual profit per month on this particular deal.
And then, Don, all right, in relationship to your side of that coin, Kevin's standard transaction is 50% of that amount. You will get that 50%. And then in form of rebate from TAG, you will get an additional 10%. So if we've got $120 margin here, you're going to get 60% of that margin. And likewise on the margin on the hardware.
Okay.
And this particular example is showing a savings of 21%. I can tell you right now that's well above what we normally offer. If you look at the average amount that we save clients, somewhere between 8 and 12% seems to be average.
Sweet spot that we really want to be looking at, I believe, gentlemen, right, is companies out there with if we think of it in traditional voice endpoints, right, probably between 30 and 100, right, which is going to translate into a higher number of printers that we see in this particular transaction. Other questions at this point? Jeff, you have any questions?
No, I don't at this point, but I like the presentation. Thank you very much.
I just had one of my guys email me a deal this morning, and I'm going to go ahead and show it to you. It's a live deal that we just got, and it is a nursing home, and this nursing home, I mean, you know, it's not a real big nursing home. I mean, I don't know how many bed nursing home it is. I'm going to say probably a 30-bed nursing home, somewhere in that arrangement. And they've got 14 devices, as you can see on the sheet. Those 14 devices are running around 12,000 pages a month. And the bottom line on a deal only of this size, where we went in and replaced, looks like here, 10 units and left 3 units the same, and then we didn't cover 1 unit and left it out of the agreement because they were too early in the lease on that particular copier. But so we replaced 10, kept 3 devices as they were, and didn't include 1. And on this deal here, $17,000 in gross profit up front. And this is the same rep that sold that deal before. He saved them 25% on this deal. And as you can see, that's not a lot of volume, 8,700 pages a month. And that's a live deal that we just got today. So there's absolutely money to be made in this environment. It is something that is achievable with almost any size type of a client. You know, once you get out of the size of that motorcycle shop, you know, you may struggle if you brought, you know, deals of that size all day long every day. You may struggle to do extremely well with that size client only because, you know, there's a lot less to work with there. And as Dale mentioned, you know, if you get in a situation where you've got, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 users, these deals can get significant.
Kevin, we have amongst our members here a few deals of pretty large potential size. Do you have an example of a pretty large scale deal readily available, or is it hard to pull out?
Oh, I'd have to pull one out, but probably. I know this guy got a large deal last year. Let's see here. Here's one here that their devices were running 572,000 pages a month, 394 devices, and they were spending $9,300 a month on their deal, and we funded $105,000 in revenue and took over the entire fleet of devices. And I got my bank to fund us we basically bought their fleet and leased it back to them. And of that $105,000 that we were funded, 87 of it was gross profit, or net profit rather, after I paid my commission to my salesperson.
These are some pretty substantial numbers.
This particular account here, we installed no equipment, none at all. But after we did the deal, we've done multiple agreements since then, and remember, we just did another one this week on this account, and let me show you kind of what has happened on some of the further agreements. Where's the schedule? Let's see here. Here's the first supplement we did here. Let's see. On this deal, we funded another $88,000. That was only
what
4
occurs,
months in.
Kevin, explain how these supplements work.
Well, they start seeing devices in their fleet that we take over, that they decide that, you know what, we'd like to standardize these. And of course, you know, obviously if we bring in new equipment, we have to charge them for it. So they decide, you know, how many devices that they want to replace. When you have a fleet of several hundred devices, this is going to obviously occur. And so they came to us and said, hey, you know, we need to bring new equipment on. Here's another one. We added another $117,000 in gross profit on the second supplement. And then on the third one, this is simply adding equipment. We got another $60,000 in revenue on that one. And I mean, it just continues to add up and add up and add up. You know, that's a large account now. I mean, you know, that's not something that is small in nature by any stretch. But needless to say, the larger the account, the even more opportunity there is to continue to make money and make more money and make more money. That's why we don't have any issue if we go into an account like this one I just showed you. We don't have any issue of going into that account up front and just taking over the entire fleet as is, and then adding devices as necessary. Because it's real hard on an account that has hundreds of devices like that to get your arms around everything, you know, up front. So you take over that fleet, figure out what needs to go, and then go to the client and say, all right, we're taking over the fleet as is, but here's what we can do. We can replace devices as they need to be replaced. And they just came into us this week, and they had probably 40 or 50 brother devices that they wanted to get rid of, and that way they made their entire fleet finally all HP. So that particular agreement is being put together as we speak right now, and it'll be a substantial amount of gross margin to be able to do that.
Take us through, Kevin, the criticality of the information that needs to be gathered at the front end of this.
Yeah, let's get that right now. We ask for specific information that is gathered up front. Like I mentioned before, we try to call on the CFO, and in turn, we ask that CFO to hand walk us over to someone in accounts payable to gather this data. The reason why we don't ask them to call the person or ask them just for a name in accounts payable is that that CFO walks us over and says, Susie, you need to get this information for Kevin. She's going to do it versus just a phone call, you know, and get to it later type of thing. The other thing is we make sure to get a date from Susie in accounting when she believes she can have this information gathered by. And we even offer to help her gather this information. But what we do is we set up the date that we start the assessment and the date we're going to end it. Typically, like I said, 2 weeks to 30 days. And we schedule that right up front. We get the accounts payable contract, and then we take this form after we fill that out over to the accounts payable contact and ask them if they have any current leases on copiers. We need copies of them. If they have any current service agreements on copiers, we need copies of them. Any monthly bills or statements for the last 3 months. Printer information. Do they own them or do they lease them? If they lease them, we need copies of them. If they own them, we want a copy of their depreciation schedule if any of them are being depreciated. We also get copies of any service agreements, invoices for the last 3 months as well for any supplies, maintenance kits, or anything of that nature for the copiers or for the faxes. I'll get it right in a minute for the printers. Anyway, for all that. And then we look at the fax and look and see if they have any, if they're not on a PRI or a T1, then we want to see what their local charges are for any phone lines that they might have. This doesn't apply if they're on a PRI or a T1, but if they're on local lines, we want to know what the costs are involving that. Once again, if they have any leases on their faxes, if they're bigger faxes, they may have a lease. If they're smaller ones, they won't. Any service agreements, and then obviously, 3 months worth of invoices for toner, service, or other supplies. Like I mentioned before, depreciation schedules for the equipment that may be depreciated. If they have an IT department, how much time that their IT guys are spending on a weekly basis for printer, copier, and fax related issues. And we ask for it weekly, not monthly, because people have a hard time calculating that. So if they have one IT guy, you'll ask them, hey, how much time do you spend a week, dealing with printer issues? And typically they'll tell you 2 or 3 hours a week. That's pretty average. And if they outsource IT, if they don't have an IT person on staff, we'll ask them if they have any invoices in relation to any IT cost from that perspective. And then if they have a floor plan of a building, that's great, because if they really want to reduce the amount of devices they have, we can kind of show them a before and after type of a picture. And what I mean by this, if they want to do what we call work grouping. If they've got printers on everybody's desk now, and they want to minimize the amount of desktop printers they have, we call that work grouping. We'll show them a before and after effect of what they have. And then lastly, any other document-related cost. Or if they are doing a lot of color over at Kinko's and just taking it out because they don't have a color device on hand, then that's information we need to have as well. That way, there obviously is a cost to that. We can show them what they can, how much it would cost to do that internally. And then we take all this information and calculate it, put it in the spreadsheets that I showed you earlier, and come up with their average monthly cost. And then obviously the software reports.
Critical aspect here again is getting face-to-face with the accounting department. And the deal maker that you are, the decision maker that you are dealing with, will not have this information, will not know where to get it. On the other hand, accounting can almost always provide you this information with fair amount of simplicity. Tell us also, Kevin, about how we go about putting the remote monitoring device that will inform us about the printer and copier infrastructure, and also provide us all the information relative to how many pages are being printed. How does one go about getting that for a client? If I have a customer, what do I need to get to you? How do I get to you to be able to get one of those devices deployed?
Bottom line is all we need is the name, address, phone number of the client, a contact name, and an email address of the client. Now, you may decide you want to do this yourself, or you may have, an IT person at that client's office do it. But get us that information, then we will send you a link to download the software and the server, name that you need to go to and the PIN code associated with it. It takes literally 2 minutes to do tops. Direct, if you really, it might take you, 45 seconds to a minute. It's that quick. It's only a little 5 megabyte file. It sits residing in the background and doesn't really have any issues with any firewalls or any data of that nature. And it automatically pulls the IP strings that it sees on the network. And so therefore it'll pull the data from the IP strings that show actually what printers or copiers or faxes are on the network. And then it starts gathering that information, and it will pull that information multiple times a day. It will also tell you if any device goes stale while your assessment is going on. It'll tell you if people stop using, any issues at all. It'll show that data.
So guys, this is as easy to deploy as, for example, a rapid fire, all right, when we're doing a network assessment relative to device management, right? You can do it remotely from your office, get it loaded on your customer server, and it will find everything on the network. The one thing that it will not discern is printers that are not connected to the network. Now, we encounter those with some frequency, do we not, Kevin?
We definitely do. And I look at that as kind of a phase 2 part of this. There's a way actually to install this on the desktops and gather that information if they're local devices, i.e. USB, parallel, whatever the case may be. But I prefer when starting out in an account to not deal with that, because that involves, having to potentially go and installing, internally on desktops. And I really initially up front like to stay away from that, only because it requires a little more user intervention. So the best way to do that is let's capture the network devices first. Now, I love to hear if they know if they have any USB devices, and if so, how many, and then we can, decide, whether it's prudent to do that up front or wait till a little later date. But we try to do the network devices only up front.
Okay, so we're going to come in, we're going to deploy a device that tells us everything about the printer and copier infrastructure, and going to tell us about the number of pages that are being printed, going to give us the core information, but we still need to gather the cost of that equipment, the copies of the leases, and copies of bills or statements for the supplies that will not be capable of being discerned. So you've got one discovery effort here, and that is literally what the sales process, guys, from your standpoint is going to amount to, is can I engage in the discovery effort sufficiently, with sufficient efficacy to make this work easily? What's it mean? You're going to want to go back into a pre-existing customer that you are taking care of, probably under one of your partnering plans of some sort, managed service agreements for some sort with either voice or data. You're going to let them know, all right, that you have the capacity to take over and manage their printer fleet with greater efficiency than they are currently experiencing, and that you'd like to take a look to see if you can save them some money. If you can then gather this information, we are almost always in a position to come back to our customer saying, here's how the amount that we can save you, here is the equipment we can replace, even after those savings, and we have very little to do from that point forward. Always the customer interface, it is always your customer, but the technical support, the support for supplies, the inventory distribution is all handled for us. And it's handled for you also, Kevin. You do not perform those functions within OneSource or within OneDOC itself, do you?
That's correct. I have a third-party
Why don't you describe your growth since September of 2009, your staffing and your technical staffing and inventory of equipment for your customers?
All right. Well, first of all, things are a lot different than when I first started out in this business. When I first started out, the guys that I partnered with was underneath the umbrella of a existing copier dealership. So we had we had our sales department there, we had our admin staff on hand, we had our IT guys on hand. We had, employed a number of service technicians. We had a warehouse full of equipment that we needed to sell. We had supplies inventory, a parts inventory, everything that you would expect in a company of that type. Probably not all that dissimilar to some of you all on the phone right now. When I started the company I have now, though, 4.5 years ago, partner companies have gotten into managed print services to assist organizations like mine and allow us not to have the overhead of the aforementioned things that I said. What I mean by that is, as an example, if I have a client that needs a new device, instead of inventorying a warehouse full of devices and not knowing the next model that I'm going to sell, I literally can go to HP, Xerox, whatever brand the case may be, and I can typically have equipment in 1 to 3 days, tops, which means I don't have to inventory a lot of equipment. Anytime you don't have to inventory equipment, that means you don't have devices getting stale in your warehouse. You don't have devices that are taking up a bunch of room, and therefore you don't need a large warehouse. And so we inventory almost no equipment just because we can get it readily from our manufacturers. Supplies, same type of thing. I've got a company that I partner with out of St. Charles, Missouri, which has warehouses all across the United States that can get supplies to your client next day, always. So what that means is when that software triggers an order, that toner cartridge will be there the very next day. And it's not once the equipment has run out of toner, it's when we get the alert from the device to ship it, which typically is in the 15 to 20% range of a cartridge, of how much is left in a cartridge. So that cartridge gets shipped, it automatically goes out. We've got an agreement with UPS where we only pay literally $3.50 per shipment, whether it be 1 cartridge or 50. And so we don't have to inventory supplies. Also, because of our national agreement with that company and one other, we can service anywhere around the country. And these are either direct employees of, say, an HP, a Xerox, or whoever the case may be. So we don't actually have to employ those service technicians, which allows us literally to do service nationwide with a nationwide infrastructure. So we third-party that through our program, basically, and our employment of our company is just simply salespeople and a small admin staff, which allows us to be able to pay our people a lot more money by not having the overhead involvement that most companies have. We also, a number of my people are virtual. So what that means is, they literally work out of their house. And so they're able to, we cut costs, so I pay them a lot more money. Most of my guys I pay, on a commission standpoint that are, if they're straight commission as an example, I pay them 50% of the gross margin. If they have a salary, obviously, I pay them, a commensurate amount to that. But our company has grown and grown and grown with leaps and bounds each year that we've been in business. And matter of fact, I just pulled up my website to kind of show you what it looks like. This last year, if we go down the bottom here, you're probably not familiar with the group. There's a company called the Petizo Group. They are an independent organization that is international in scope, and they rate the managed print service providers around the world every year. And this last year, they put a press release out as to who they felt like the top managed print service provider internationally were. And if you look at the list here, you may or may not know of any of the companies on there, but as you can see right here in the middle, we are one of the 11 companies that they provided that award to. And they felt like that we met every aspect in excellence as far as being able to provide a managed print service program to our clients. And they do this every year, and hopefully we will be on there again the next time they do that. But they feel like these companies are the best in the world at providing, infrastructure, sales, service, all the different metrics and performance in our industry. Dale?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of encountering Kevin first when I heard him speak about a year ago at Petizo. Petizo is kind of like a tag, guys. All right, it's a for-profit organization. Doesn't do the type of educational training to the depth that we do, but they're a mass gatherer of statistics and everything else for their industry. And they hold a national conference each year of companies in the managed print services industry. It's where I encountered Kevin. I heard him speak there last May. I sought him out when I encountered him again a few months later at CompTIA and ran into him speaking to our dear friend and your dear friend from Great America, Greg Vanderwalker, and also watch him being honored to ride at the CompTIA Communities Managed Print Group. We were having troubles. You know, we tried to get into this business with Oki. We didn't get anything in terms of the support that we were looking for. We found out that we had a great challenge there in that, well, they might be able to provide us some significant savings on the print side of the business as you got into the multifunction machines, the copiers. They were really impossible to deal with because they're a single product company, and on the copier side, frankly, they're extraordinarily uncompetitive in the marketplace versus almost anybody else that's out there, the Ricos, the Xeroxes, the HPs, whomever. Mid-September, we got back in contact. I asked Kevin to come out here. He did us the good favor of spending a day and a half out here at TAG and learned everything about our organization, and then gave us another full day of what we're attempting to do here in an hour, getting background on OneDOC, and we've been building a relationship ever since. We have just really started to launch the actual process of deploying DCAs. To this date, we haven't done or completed a deal. We started early, I guess we must be just about completed with our analysis over at VoiceSmart's first customer there, are we not, Kevin?
Correct.
In that time frame, this 30-day time frame that we're taking to analyze.
Right.
We have a future here that I believe is extraordinary. We own something that no one else owns in the marketplace, and that is the ability to get a leveraged appointment with any of the thousands of customers, or at least hundreds of customers that each of you have. We have a fulfillment capacity, and we have a brilliant pricing structure, one that takes into consideration that which most other companies do not in the industry, and therefore do not give your client the accurate information of his cost structure. That is, analyzing the cost of the equipment, as well as the cost of the supplies and billings as to what it costs to provide a written page of documentation. With that, we're able to bring back them savings, and that structure also allows us to come in the back door in determining how much and at what price we are going to provide equipment to them. I showed Kevin our financial analysis of CTAP, and you know on CTAP we enjoy approximately, we market at 2.2, and we enjoy a nice 55% gross margin on our equipment sales. And Kevin yawned, because his average gross margin, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, is between 62 and 65%.
That's correct.
It's a strikingly good economic model. It has great support behind it. We have the literally almost acknowledged leader of the managed print services industry heading it up in the gentleman that you were speaking of today. And I can't encourage you enough to at least go out and do one or two of these. We are victims always of our own inertia. We are victim always of our, let's see how it works out. If we're trying to move into managed services, we're trying to move into every area of recurring revenue that we possibly can. This is one of the two or three, certainly on the top two in my opinion, that we can migrate to with the least amount of risk, the least amount of effort, and the most amount of profitability on both the volume side and on the bottom line side. So we need, what I do is simply encourage you to do this, all right? Kevin, can you flash your contact information up here?
Sure.
I'm going to forward it to everybody on the call here in just a moment, all right? But I would suggest, all right, take a customer, someone you know that you can go to, create that opportunity to walk in. Sometimes this will combine with other things. Don, you and I have spoken about the potential of one of your large refresh opportunities that's coming up under CTAP, where we do not believe we have product to sell the customer. If we combine these types of savings with refresh capacity, we could probably replace every single device in that customer's fleet with brand new equipment at great margins, and even strongly potentially, all right, buy out existing leases if any of them exist, because we got two pots to boil in there too. I will mention one other thing, by the way, also. Currently, all of the billing for all of this activity is run through Great America Leasing, our partner of many years. They're also the leader in the managed print service area for billing capacities. So all the compensation that we're talking about here runs through them and then is transmitted directly out to you. Everybody gets their piece of the pie, so to speak, on the monthly, both at the time of funding and on the pie, directly from GLAC or GFS.
And if I can
Any
add
other questions? Or do you want to comment on the Great America relationship?
Yeah, if you don't mind real quick, Dale, a couple things. I just pulled up my contact info, which is, on my email. But basically, if you want to get a hold of me, the best number to reach me at is on there on the bottom is my cell, the 361-7666 with the area code 405. And you can also see up top my email address, kmorris@mpsok.com. Those are the easiest ways to get a hold of me. Not to put any damper on the Okie relationship that TAG initially had, but we don't have the restrictions that an Okie had. I mean, that's really all it comes down to. For the people that tried to get involved in that and didn't have success, we just don't have the same issues they have. They're a manufacturer of equipment, or they have equipment manufactured, for them by other companies. In the case of those multifunction devices, they were Toshiba devices that were manufactured for Okie, and they only had 2 or 3 different models of them, and they were at skyrocket high prices. And unfortunately for Okie, their national program just simply has not done well. We don't have those restrictions. Plus, all they care about is selling equipment, moving the equipment they have in their warehouse. Don't have that restriction either. And from a multi-brand approach, we're able to service and support way more different brands than they were capable of doing. So there's an area of differentiation there. The other side of it is I encourage you, please call me, email me, whatever the case may be, for any questions on any issues that you have. And if you're skeptical, I don't blame you. This is different than what you're doing right now to some extent. Happy to answer anything there. And if you're still skeptical, even after talking to me, call Greg Vanderwalker at Great America. Greg and I have known each other, gosh, it's got to be close to a decade, if not longer now. And I've known Greg for that period of time. I've done a lot of business with Greg and Great America, and I think he could tell you all the ins and outs and how we do business. I actually ran for several years an MPS training seminar series for Great America that a lot of which was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa at their home office, but we also did some around the country as well at different industry events. And I think Greg would tell you all the good, the bad, the ugly that you'd want to know about managed print, as well as my company and my relationship with them. Dale?
Yeah, we've vetted Kevin very, very heavily, all right, internally here. What is most important about this, guys, is like anything else. In this particular case, the interest of our partner and our own are coincidental, right? The negative about Okie always is primarily about selling boxes, right? And the other side of the coin is that Kevin's business, like our business, is in the provisioning of long-term recurring revenue style opportunities with our customers. We're providing the customer, right, with the result that we need to get, the highest level of service capacity. Is that what assures the ongoing relationship? So we have a mutuality of interest in what happens to our end user in this. We have a uniqueness in market approach. Kevin's approach to the pricing and structure of transactions in the managed services area is as unique as our CTAP transaction is in the voice area, in that it brings, all right, a different sense of values to the customer that are not available in other formats that you take them to. So once again, all right, all I can do is to urge you to get participatory, right? We're gonna have Kevin up in Nashville in late April. I would hope by then that at least 2 or 3 of the companies on board here could be telling their success stories to their peers by the time we get there.
And to add on to that, that's my whole goal, is to have at least 2 or 3 of these that we can actually talk about at the national conference in Nashville into people, because we're going to have a booth there and be able to show people, more information hands-on. But the reality of it is, for the people who get on early with us and can bring us some quality deals that we can turn, those success stories, as you well know, will breed and catch fire at some point if we can show some success this early on in the program.
Any other questions, comments?
Hey, Kevin, this is Paul at Bevcom.
Yes, Paul?
Hey, if we start selling this, say, in Rochester, Minnesota, my area, and something happens to the printer physically, who would be the technician that would come there and take care of that issue? How does that work?
You simply contact us, and we place a service call to a local Rochester technician, and they go out and take care of the deal.
Okay.
We've got a huge list of technicians in every city in the country.
Okay.
And by the way, if you're going to go to Rochester, you might as well just go ahead and knock a small deal out initially. Let's go ahead and get the Mayo Clinic on board, and we can move forward with that one to start.
Oh, start small. Good idea. Well, if you're ready, I'm ready.
Absolutely.
If I can sell that, I can take the rest of the year off.
Yeah, you and I both.
Then Jake won't have to worry about seeing me ever. All right, well, that makes sense. That's good.
Anyone else?
I think I'm good. I look forward to learning more about the project. This is Jeff O'Neill. Thank you.
All right, Jeff. Look forward to working with you as well. And you're out of what city, Jeff?
We're out of Denver.
Out of Denver. All right, very good.
Hey, Jeff.
Yes, sir.
How was Aspen?
A lot of snow. An awful lot of snow.
You survived? No broken bones?
No broken bones, just sore bones of my age. Thanks for asking.
So everyone, I appreciate your contact. Kevin, we touch base after I get off this call? I've got a request in. Both Sean Hogan and Corey, his IT guy, or the individual that's going to be spearheading this program for him, were scheduled to be on this call. They are both prevented from getting even near their offices by the storms that are slamming Boston right now. They would like to reschedule an opportunity as quickly as possible. So I'll probably hear from them a little bit later today. Will you be available for me to reach later today?
Not today, no. The rest of the day today, Dale. But we could do something tomorrow, possibly around this same time frame tomorrow.
Yeah, here, I wasn't talking about doing something today. I was just talking about reaching out to you to be able to schedule something for tomorrow or Monday.
Oh, sure. Oh, absolutely. You betcha.
Perfect. Very good. Well, everybody, thank you again, all right, for being with us. We kept you just a few minutes past the hour we anticipated, and good hunting out there.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.